Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a marvelous day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. Well, all we can say is they're at it again. The headline here says, Arizona Republican refers to Black Americans as colored people in House floor debate. Representative Eli Crane used a derogatory phrase in describing his proposed amendment to a military bill. Democratic Representative Joyce Beatty asked that his words be stricken from the record. Could we all just stop, take a deep breath, and say, the more things change, the more they remain the same? It almost doesn't matter what this was all about, but I'll give a little bit of context. Representative Eli Crane, Republican Arizona, referred to Black people as colored people Thursday in floor debate over his proposed amendment to an annual defense policy bill, prompting a stern rebuke from the former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. My amendment has nothing to do with whether or not colored people or Black people or anybody can serve, said Crane, who is in his first term. It has nothing to do with any of that stuff. Lawmakers were debating a series of GOP-backed amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act, which the House aims to pass by the end of the week. Crane said his amendment would prohibit the Defense Department from considering race, gender, religion, political affiliations, or any other ideological concepts as the sole basis for recruitment training, education, promotion, or retention decisions. This is hypocritical because he is saying when the military recruits for training, education, promotion, or whether or not somebody should be kept in the military, they should not consider the person's race, gender, religion, political affiliations, or any other ideological concept. Now, on the face of it, he's right. But it's hypocritical in that there has never been a time in America when race was not considered. And gender. Race and gender. Race first and then gender over everything. He has a good concept. It's the right message, but the wrong messenger. The military was never intended to be, inclusive. Its strength is not its diversity. Its strength is its standards, said Crane, 43, a combat veteran. I'm going to tell you guys right now, you can keep playing around these games with diversity, equity, and inclusion, but there are some real threats out there. And if we keep messing around and we keep lowering our standards, it's not going to be good, he said. Immediately after Crane finished his remarks, Representative Joyce Beatty, Democrat Ohio, asked that the derogatory phrase he used be stricken from the record. And here is the beautiful lady from Ohio scolding the Southern gentleman from Arizona. I find it offensive and very inappropriate, said Beatty, who was the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus in the previous Congress. I am asking for unanimous consent to take down the words of referring to me or any of my colleagues as colored people. Crane interjected with a request to amend his comments to people of color. Beatty insisted, however, that the words be stricken from the record. They were removed by unanimous consent. Well, good for her. I'm glad she didn't leave that people of color thing hanging. Asked for comment about his choice of words, Crane said he misspoke. In a heated floor debate on my amendment that would prohibit discrimination on the color of one's skin in the armed forces, I misspoke, Crane said in a statement. Every one of us is made in the image of God and created equal. So there are two things going on here. This guy is proposing an amendment to the Defense Authorization Act that would prohibit the Defense Department from considering your race, your gender, your religion, your political affiliations, your sexual orientation, although he didn't mention that, as the basis for recruiting, training, education, promotion, or retention decisions in the military. Okay? There really is nothing wrong with that. And then he said his amendment didn't have anything to do with whether or not colored people or black people or anybody can serve. It has nothing to do with any of that stuff. And he's right about that. When he says race, gender, religion, political affiliations, and so forth, that had nothing to do with race. He's not arguing anything about race. How I'm reading his statement is that he's saying you shouldn't just be grabbing up anybody and putting them in the military just to achieve diversity and inclusion. And he's saying just doing that would weaken the military. And I agree with that. The mistake he made was saying colored people. When you say colored people, apparently, that's offensive. But if you say people of color, apparently that's not offensive. What is the difference between colored people and people of color? If you're colored, you're black, so that's offensive. But if you're people of color, that's not offensive because then everybody gets in. We get to mix in with everybody else. And that's supposed to be some kind of an honor for us. Now we're in with everybody else, so we're not set apart. We're not colored. We're people of color. Well, there is a price that we pay for refusing to define ourselves. Now, white people in the South used to call us colored from the time I was very young. And then somewhere along the way, they got the message. We don't like to be called colored. We like to be called black. It was the hardest thing for Southern white people to start calling black people black because to them, that was offensive. And to say colored, well, that was preferable to calling you the N-word. So they thought they were being politically correct to call you colored. Well, they started calling us black. And we had a pretty good run for it. White people in the South had stopped saying colored. Then somewhere between the 90s and the early 2000s, they came up with this people of color. And that was a way of corralling everybody except the white people into one category. We have already talked about how that has hurt us in education and employment. So this whole people of color thing has done damage to us. So now we're back to the drawing board. A white person gets up on the congressional floor and talk about colored people. He really was not just talking about, he didn't know what he was talking about, really. He did not know what he was talking about, and then he was trying to include everybody. He knows that calling black people colored is offensive, and that's why he went back and said black people. But it's our fault, I think, because we refuse to define ourselves, because so many of us really do want to assimilate with these other groups of people who don't want to assimilate with us. So this was a good lesson in my mind. This was a good lesson. And it reminds us that the demons from the past are not dead. They're just carefully hidden away. At least the congresswoman from Ohio had it stricken from the record, and good for her. But this is what we face when we won't define ourselves. We do ourselves a disservice when we don't take a stand and don't stand up like men and women and say, no, this is who we are, and we have to do it collectively. You have one group of black people trying to take a stand, and then you got somebody else over here telling people, oh, it's all right for you to call, you say the N-word, it's all right for you to say the N-word. Well, see, that negates what the people who are trying to stand for something have already said. This is another story that's trending that seems to have some kind of ambiguous context. Listen to this.
The point is, the moment you say you're a black person, I want to cast you as a black person, I'm going to ask you black people questions, you have ghettofied the interaction. If I'm a black scientist to you, then I'm not actually a scientist to you.
Yeah.
You have
asterisk by your name. Yeah.
you have constrained who and what I can be in your mind by even assigning that label.
This is Dr. Neil Degrasse Tyson talking to DJ Vlad about his experience as a black scientist and how people try to mark him down, so to speak, and diminish his legitimacy because he's black. He is an astrophysicist. He studies the universe, the stars, the planets, the galaxies, and black holes. He makes very interesting discussions about black holes. He also observes space with telescopes and satellites, and analyzes data to answer questions about how the universe works, how it began, and how it will end. He is one of the few black men that Bill Maher will have on his show because he's interesting and he is knowledgeable and he knows about the world, and he can take anything that's going on in the world and apply it to science. And that's why I like listening to him. So black people have been panning him about this. They don't like the fact that he said that they were ghettoifying him by calling him a black scientist. Now, two things can be true at once. He can still be a proud black man and not want to be called a black scientist. And although a lot of black people didn't like him saying that, I got what he was saying. When they say you are a black scientist, they're suggesting that, well, you just do the black science stuff. We're going to get the white guy in to do the real science, even though he is the best scientist and the best understood scientist in the United States right now. But the way white supremacy works, so that it doesn't have to compete with black people one-on-one, head-to-head, they will say you are the black, whatever that is. I can envision him being at a conference and a group of white men are standing to the side talking, and then somebody will bring up his name, something that he has done or one of his discoveries, and somebody will say, oh yeah, you mean the black guy. See, that's the kind of stuff they do. And the purpose of that is to diminish your influence, and it attempts to diminish your legitimacy as a scientist, as a teacher, as a lawyer, as an accountant, and especially as a doctor. You're going to have to see the black doctor today. So I got what he was trying to say. And I also believe that one of the reasons that we suffer from these humiliations is because there are too many people trying to speak for black America. If we pick somebody that we want to be the spokesperson for black people, the media and the operators in America, white supremacy you could call it, will go and elevate somebody that's not well read, somebody that's not really literate, somebody who doesn't even have a grasp of what's going on in the world, but they'll elevate that person with money or whatever it is, fame that they want, and that person will become the spokesperson. So then we've got somebody over here that we want to speak for us, but now they've picked somebody else, and that person is only going to be a puppet to say and do what they tell them to do. So this is why it is so hard for us to define who we are. Dr. Neil Degrasse Tyson spoke a truth. He spoke a real truth about what happens with accomplished black Americans. And he has to be able to tell it his way without everybody getting upset about it, because many people can relate to that story. It seems that the word ghettofied was what was triggering, but he's working with these people. He knows that's how these people feel about black people. And this is an old trick, labeling and stereotyping. Everybody's the same. You're all the same. This is how they want us to see each other, because that's how they want to see us, as opposed to looking at a brilliant scientist. They want to see him as a ghettofied Negro. But they do that to try to diminish you. That also makes it easier for them to steal your work, because you were the black person, so you couldn't possibly come up with this great theory. This is what white supremacy is. It protects itself by any means necessary. So if I have to diminish you to elevate myself, I don't have a problem doing that, even though you are more qualified to be in the position than I am. I am white supremacy. So I only think about myself. And that's how they stay in power. So y'all let me know what you think about what he said. And also what you think about this Republican calling black people colored people. You just cannot make this stuff up. Okay, y'all. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment. Share the video. And as always, have a wonderful day.